Welcome to the Family Movie Night Podcast, episode 33. In light of the movie we are talking about today, this is 1998's Rush Hour. I wanted to ask my wonderful co-hosts, if your life was a buddy cop movie like Rush Hour or a Lethal Weapon or something along those lines, what movie or TV show character would you want to be your partner? So let's go here to the hero of our podcast, Donnie Dorsey. Donnie, who are you having as your partner, man?
I think I'm gonna have Agent K.
Oh, I think you just won the whole thing. That didn't even pop in my head, but man, those are good.
Great answer.
Just to clarify, Agent K, Tommy Lee Jones from Men in Black. Perfect answer.
Oh, that is such.
I do like that you're just casting yourself as Will Smith. Very good. I love that. Okay. And then, of course, we've already heard from him, the villain of our podcast in this case, Ken Leung's Sung from Rush Hour, Kung Fu Master himself, Mr. Sawyer Hewlett.
I'm going to cast myself in another buddy cop plot, and I'm going to go with Murtaugh, Roger Murtaugh from Lethal Weapon.
You're casting yourself as Murtaugh?
No, I'm casting myself as Riggs in this situation. Okay,
but clearly you are the Gary Busey villain of this.
No, I'm the edgy, I'm the maverick cop.
I kidnapped your family and I'm not going to give them back.
Yeah. First of all, Gary Busey in that movie is ridiculously kind of comically dumb, but
no, he's the best. Don't even talk about Lethal Weapon, best Christmas movie of all time. Go ahead.
Oh, it is a great Christmas movie. Okay, but I want Murtaugh as my partner in
I like it.
crimes.
I think that's good. That's good, man. Getting too old. All right, Heidi Cooper, bringing some grace to this with your children in the background this morning. Yeah. Full on mom mode. So who are you? If you had to have a buddy cop life, who's your partner?
For sure, it's an easy answer. I'm going to be Mark Wahlberg and the other guys, and my partner is Will Ferrell. And I think it's because between the two of them, I could take either one, but I think I've got a little edge to me.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with me being Mark. I don't think Will Ferrell has enough edge for me.
I'm surprised nobody said Bad Boys or
Bad Boys.
Oh my God, Martin Lawrence.
Oh man, Martin Lawrence. Man, that would be the best. Welcome back to the Family Movie Night Podcast, where we want to help your family have better conversations around the content you consume. My name is Nathan, and I am joined, as always, by my wonderful co-host, the hero of the podcast, Donnie Dorsey, the villain of the podcast, Sawyer Hewlett, and today just fully taking on the mom role, trying to keep us all in line. Heidi Cooper, not only having to keep us in line, but also her own kids in line. It's a tough life, Heidi. It's a tough life.
It is.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to be the mom around here.
Someone has to do it, and the rest of us have to help you with your computer. So
yes, exactly.
Also the mom role.
Just make sure that I'm actually present.
Yes, exactly. But today we are talking about a great film from 1998 called Rush Hour, which you most likely will see on TNT one Thursday night. Well, not Thursday night, because when basketball's not in session. Most likely you're just going to be watching this on TNT in reruns, or as I used to call these movies like this, these are perfect hotel room movies. When you're just stuck in a hotel and HBO's playing something, it's Rush Hour. So you as a family, you're on vacation over the summer, Rush Hour comes on TV. We want to talk to you about how to have a conversation about this movie. Now, we will say, if you're not watching an edited for TV version, which I think this movie edited for TV would have to be hilarious, what words they substitute, because this is a PG-13 movie. And there's a fair amount of language. It's funny to me watching this. I don't know what you guys' experience was watching this movie, but there aren't a lot of PG-13 movies that have this amount of language anymore. Did you guys?
Yeah.
Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed it. I remember, like, I wasn't allowed to watch this movie until I was 12 or 13. My parents just stopped caring, and I was like I had
They
built it up
stopped
in my
trying to
brain.
fight the battle.
Yeah,
anymore.
well, like I had built it up. I was like, this is the greatest comedy in the world. I haven't been allowed to watch it. It therefore must be incredible. And I watched it. And I was like, it's good. And now I watch it. I'm like, I like it a lot more because it's so different. It's a time capsule. But at the time, I was like, oh, that was okay.
So this is funny to me. So you're talking about not being allowed to watch it. We went and saw this movie in theaters, and I was 8 years old when this movie came out. And my brother was 5. So I know for 100% fact we went to the. I remember sitting in the Dollar Theater in Fayetteville watching this movie. Back
awesome.
before the Dollar Theater, for those of you, Donnie, and I don't know, Heidi, if y'all did y'all go to Dollar movies at in Fayetteville?
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right, we've talked a lot at the beginning of this. I will say you should go as a parent if language is something that kind of bothers you for your kids. This may be something for your older kids to watch. So you may want to go to IMDb. They always have a parent's guide, and they will tell you specifically what words are used and how many of those words are used. So if that's an issue for you, as always, all of my children watch this movie, so I will not judge anyone who allows their kids to watch it, but we don't want to put you as a parent in any awkward situations. But there's been a lot of preamble. We haven't even said yet. Donnie Dorsey, tell them what we do on this podcast.
Yeah. So on this podcast, we encourage every family at Community Christian Church to have a monthly movie night to help you and your children build memories and start conversations that matter. The goal of our family ministry is to help you raise your children to love Jesus and his way of life above all other things. And we know that critical to that is for you to have a routine, regular time of connection and shared experiences that'll help you build some stronger relationships.
And, movie nights are great opportunities to do that because movies, they're an easy way to share, a lot of different emotions. And with this movie in particular, I think about laughter and joy together. But they also give us a chance to talk about what matters most to us in ways that are meaningful and memorable with our children. And this is a movie that I think is actually very memorable, if I'm being honest. But on this podcast, we want to, we're going to recommend some movies that you can watch on a movie night. But more than that, we want to give you some ideas for meaningful conversations that you can have with your children during or after the movie.
And as always, the point of this podcast is not to add another thing to your to-do list as a parent that you would feel guilty about not doing. We just want to make it easier for you and your kids to enjoy being together so that you can build memories and have conversations that matter. So throughout our conversation today, remember that we want to have fun and help you think through simple and easy ways to share your love of Jesus with your kiddos.
And, the idea really behind this whole podcast is what Heidi was saying there right at the end, which is we believe if we can help you watch movies that you're already watching, right? Like I said, this movie comes on TV all the time. You're watching these movies and you can find ways to have conversations with your kids about maybe not even Jesus, but just aspects of life with Jesus. The more they are formed into people who think and act and speak like Jesus, well, then Jesus just becomes more beautiful to them. And so this movie, we think, is a great opportunity to do that. In case you haven't seen Rush Hour, it is a movie about a loyal and dedicated Hong Kong inspector played by Jackie Chan. And he teams up with a reckless and loudmouth LAPD detective. What I love is that this is LAPD detective. And Chris Tucker could not sound more like a dude from Atlanta. But yes, Chris Tucker, LAPD detective. To rescue the Chinese consul's kidnapped daughter while trying to arrest a dangerous crime lord along the way. Normally, the IMDb descriptions of movies are terrible. That was a great description. I mean, it tells you everything you need to know about the plot. Maybe it's because everything's a lot simpler when you're not having to find Infinity Stones. So when I don't have to explain 22 movies of backstory.
And in the synopsis, you're trying to hide Infinity Stones.
Yes, yeah. Every movie now. So here's what I'll say as we're getting started with. Hey, let's just talk about this movie and why it's fun. This movie obviously it's a throwback. This is going to be tough. Next year, this movie will be 25 years old. It will be a classic movie as of next year, which is just bizarre. But
Is this a classic?
yeah, once you hit 25 on anything.
No. I know it's 25 years old, but is it like a classic? Classic is the thing. I don't know.
What do you mean by that? I don't know. You're saying it's not good enough to be a classic? Are we going to have a fight here?
Look, it's good. I don't know.
It's the basis of 90% of all buddy cop movies
I was just saying,
that have gone after it.
Yeah, it follows the buddy cop formula so perfectly. I can't honestly think of many buddy cop movies that top it in range of popularity,
that's
cultural resonance,
in
terms of I would even say quality. I think this is a just top notch.
I don't have like beef or anything. I was just curious what we all think of the quality of the movie.
As the hero, I'm offended.
Let's talk about what actually works about this movie. And so what I was going to say was what feels like a throwback to this movie. If you are a parent who feels like every time I go to the movie, my kids have to watch 7 movies prior to seeing this current. Before we filmed, we talked about the latest Jurassic World movie. If you feel like in order for my kids to understand going to see Jurassic World Dominion, they also have to see all 5 other Jurassic Park movies because there's going to be characters brought back. Or if they're going to go see Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, they have to also see 7 other movies to understand it. This is a movie that is so simplistic. And even though it is from 25 years ago, to me, does not feel dated. I don't know.
No,
does anyone else? Yeah, I mean,
it feels good.
Yeah, it feels right in the midst. So, Donnie, why don't you talk a little bit? I know you and I have actually talked a lot about this movie just over the years and how much both of us just love this movie. So, Donnie, where were you in 1998 when you saw this movie, and how do you feel about it today?
Let's see, 98. That would have been probably high school.
Yeah.
So, I say this movie, it holds up really well. It's a lot of movie packed into like 90 minutes or so of, and it has all the little things you need. It has the comedy, it has the action. There is like just everything, like the physical comedy, like the words that, like the stuff they come up with, like the back and forth, the jargon between he and Chris Tucker, like Lee and now I can't think of his name.
Carter.
No. And Carter. Lee and Carter. Like their back and forth, their dynamic of how they work together, and all the subplot characters that also work really well within the scope. I just thought it was great.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I love about this movie is that all the characters, whether they're, the main or not, like very insignificant characters, they add so much to the comedy level of the movie.
Yes.
The captain, even the little girl, where every time she sees Lee, she kicks him.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, one of my favorite characters in the whole movie is Elizabeth Pena as Johnson, who's the bomb squad detective. She is just perfect in her timing. Like she's just done with Carter as the movie begins. Like she's just done with his nonsense. And then there's kind of this like, will they, won't they towards the end of the movie, which really has almost no setup. I mean, they say something earlier, like a one line kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then they have this like chemistry together that's not romantic. I don't mean like the movie has this romantic subplot, but as you were talking about just packing everything into 90 minutes, the actors are carrying a lot in this movie. And I feel like we don't see that in a lot of movies anymore. It feels like every movie now has to be 2 hours and 25 minutes long because the script has to spell everything out for everybody. Yeah. There's no room for the actors to just imply things. That's what I mean by Elizabeth Pena's character is everything is almost implied. There's no moment where they sit and have a romantic thing and we've got to flesh that out for her to have a real character. She's really a character without this, but both of them kind of imply that, I don't know. Was I the only person who gathered there might be chemistry between the two?
Yeah, well, and she's just disgusted by him. I think it's funny because he thinks there's chemistry.
Yes. Well,
him and you are the only ones who see it. Well, otherwise, she's just shooting him down right and left. And he says, and that conversation where they have, and then he asks her about what she's wearing at the end of it. It's a very serious conversation. She agrees to help. And then he's like, so what do you wear? And she just hangs up. And like,
Yes.
that is all she needed to do. Like,
Well, what I
conversation's
love is,
over.
and maybe this is it. She treats him the way my wife treats me. So
There it is.
that's
So
what it is.
basically, your wife has been trying
biggest
to avoid you since she met you.
Yes, absolutely.
Nathan just took a gigantic L on the podcast. So
No, that's what it is. I will say, just for people, that was behind Heidi on the video version of the podcast. Her husband just walked in, but he was blurred out in the background. I didn't want people to think that Heidi was being mugged on the podcast. There was just a man walking in behind her.
I'm
So,
safe. I'll let
Heidi
you
is
guys
fine.
know my safe word next time, so
There you go.
you can call for help if I need
That's
it.
right. Okay, very good. All right, Sawyer, you already had some hot takes about Rush Hour that all of us have now decided you are the villain of the podcast. But can you give us some positive takes of Rush Hour, please?
oh yeah, absolutely. I'm always a sucker for a good Jackie Chan flick. Just to start off, like I don't know what my first Jackie Chan movie was. This is my favorite English language Jackie Chan movie for sure. I really enjoy a lot of the the comedic kung fu sequences in this movie. And also, I mean, look, Chris Tucker is like his comedic timing is on point in this movie. And like Chris Tucker is just generally not my flavor of comedy. That being said, in this movie, he is fantastic, I think.
Sawyer, your takes are just Friday? Come on, man. Like,
Look,
Sawyer,
I think that he is a not as good part as Ice Cube and Cuba Gooding Jr. in that movie. That's my take. Anyways, but with this movie, no, I have a lot of fun watching this movie.
You broke Nathan. You just broke
know.
Nathan.
I am beyond. Look, man, you're in the ATL now. You
I know.
gotta drop that Ice Cube nonsense of bringing Ice Cube in as the best part of Friday. You're in the ATL. This is Chris Tucker's home country. This is we stand for Chris Tucker every day.
Yeah, look, I like Chris Tucker too. Okay, in this movie, and so I think that I think the action in this movie is actually like really good. Yeah, I've already mentioned Jackie Chan. I think that this movie has a surprising amount of heart as well, which I'm sure we're going to get into. But yeah, you hit on it earlier, Nathan. Like, it's such a simple, not cynical, fun movie, and that it's 90 minutes is just like so nice. Like, this is a movie that, if I'm like hanging out with someone, I will have no problems being like, throw on Rush Hour, because I know that everyone's going to have a great time watching Rush Hour.
I'll say this for families with either young kids, teenagers, whoever you watch this movie with. I think this movie, because of the way the action kind of plays out and the comedy plays out, the action, and this is very much a Jackie Chan thing, is central to the comedy, right? Like, you have to have that. Donnie, I see you nod in your head. What do you think Jackie Chan brings to movie? And I'll say this. I don't think we have anybody who is an equivalent to Jackie Chan in modern movies.
Oh, no, not at all. I think the closest we had is, well, as far as the equivalent of the abilities, but not necessarily a comedy, was probably Jet Li.
Right.
But like, I think the thing about with Jackie Chan is everything is interspersed in the actual plot. Like, you see certain things, like even the little thing about how much he respects like the things that he has, and like all the heritage of the vases and things. When he's catching that vase, as he's protecting this vase while also trying to fight off these people, was like, it's hilarious because it shows a character part of him in a comedic way.
Yeah. Well, and I think what's fun for me about that, as opposed to like kind of modern movie stuff, is the way in which this movie, the stakes are completely different in those action sequences. And I don't even mean like the big stakes of whether the bomb is going to go off or what's going to happen with the little girl. I mean, in those individual moments, he really wants to protect this vase that's about to crash. And so he both has to get rid of this bomb, protect the vase and beat up the guys who are gone. There's so much that is packed into that as my kids could not stop laughing. And the way that he hurts himself, but gets hurt, like he's such a, we live in a world that this may be too behind the scenes for some people, but like both The Rock and Vin Diesel have in their contracts, they've assigned a point system to the damage they take and the damage their characters give out in the movie. And The Rock has it in his contract. He can never lose a fight, in that he can never take more punches than he gives. Because he always has to win the thing. Jackie Chan is like, I will take 30 times the amount of punches that I give. And there's something that's just very fun about that this is almost a self-deprecating hero. And you don't really get that. We get a lot of heroes that kind of tease one another, like in the Marvel movies and such. We don't get any that kind of look like a loser, and Jackie Chan does that, but in a very graceful and cool way. Heidi, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, there's so much of an element of like slapstick to the fight scenes that make it. Yeah. So like in the bar, but I'm thinking specifically of the one where they make it up to the upstairs and they're fighting. He comes in and Chris Rock is about to get killed or, beat up or whatever. And then they just start going and it's just, oh, look out behind you, both of them. And then they like switch. It's just so funny. And they're like half the time through their fight scenes, they're arguing with each other and giving each other crap.
Well, and in some ways that is like the basic, and maybe that's what feels very modern, in that a lot of the Marvel movies have kind of taken that kind of mode of every fight is full of jokes. Like we're going to fight each other. Like I think about Captain America Civil War, where Spider-Man is fighting a Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and they're like, I don't know how many fights you've been in, but people don't usually talk this much. Like they're joking and they're fighting the whole time. And that feels very much like it comes from Rush Hour. I can't think of many other movies that have that kind of, we're joking with each other, we're fighting. All of that just blends so well. Now, Sawyer, with your hot takes, I know for sure you like Jackie Chan. Don't you come in here?
Absolutely. Oh,
okay.
I love Jackie Chan. And look, that bar scene is like awesome. The entire sequence is like perfectly executed. I have nothing bad to say about Look,
nope, you don't need to add anything else.
Is Jackie Chan. Jackie Chan is my favorite part of this movie. That's all that I need to say about him. He is excellent.
Before you break the podcast, you're gonna break up this. Speaking of Captain America Civil War, this is gonna be what breaks up the team, Sawyer.
It won't be my technology for once that prohibits this from going forward.
You just be careful what you say about Chris Tucker, man. He's a national treasure. All right. Well, let's get to the themes of this podcast, and that leads perfectly into it. The ideas of really what we're trying to talk about in this movie, and it's pretty clear. I mean, the whole movie is really about it, is building friendships with people who are different than you, right? People who come from different backgrounds than you, people who are ethnically different than you, people who are from maybe even a different nation than you are. There's a language barrier. There's all different kinds of stuff in this movie that kind of go towards that. And obviously, and we've had many conversations about this on this podcast and on our other podcast, the weekly podcast for Community Christian, that the church is meant to be the place. One thing that is unique about the church is it's not just the fact that there is diversity, because in our country and all of our world, diversity is a fairly common thing. It's the fact that people who are radically different than each other in every sort of way would choose to lay down their lives for one another. People who rightfully know Chris Tucker is the best actor of all time, and those who just spout nonsense.
Okay, no.
No.
You just said he's the best actor of all time. Okay.
Hang on. Let's get back. But we would love and serve one another and still be on the podcast together. So the fact that the church would be the place that would happen, and to be able to talk to our kids about, use this movie as an example of how do we build friendships with people who are different than us. So Donnie, why don't we start? I know when you and I were kind of having this conversation beforehand, the ways that this movie starts, and it really starts from that very first meeting with Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker, of this idea of not judging a book by its cover, and really just not bringing assumptions, right? Not seeing a person and making an assumption. And obviously probably the standout line from this movie, as far as what people remember, is, "Do you understand the words coming out of my mouth?" You know, my kids even now still saying that. My kids now started saying that to one another. So, Donnie, you want to take it from there? What is it about this movie that gives you an opportunity to talk about that idea of assumptions?
I think, yeah, definitely with this movie, when you're watching it with your kids, like it's very easy to watch how even from the second that Lee comes off the plane, Carter has already decided that, oh, well, this means that I'm going to have like that. He's already decided what he's going to say, what he's going to need to do, what responsibilities he's going to have because he's assumed a lot of things about Lee before he even, meets him. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of times it's the same way sometimes we can introduce or interact with others without realizing. Like,
Mhm.
if say for instance, like if someone catches me on a day where maybe I was working in the yard and I'm covered in mud and I look like I haven't had a shower all day, you might mistake me for someone else or and treat me completely different than you would on a day maybe that
Mhm.
you catch me in like a nice suit, or like the person that walks into a car dealership and doesn't look like they have money because they don't flaunt it, and then you
Mhm.
you treat them differently because of the way they look or the way you assume or the interactions you've had. And I think this movie really demonstrates that because there's a lot of stereotypical things that like Carter says, like the things that he wants to eat or how he speaks, and he talks really slowly to him or loudly, like because it's like the person like when we stop and you turn down the radio when you're lost because somehow that's going to make you find things. But
Yeah.
like you're going to hear better. I guess I don't know, but it's the same way he treats him. He's like, if I talk louder, you'll understand me better. It's like, no, no, that just makes you look silly. Like, but
Well, and to your point, Donnie, I think it's funny about it is the issue is not that Jackie Chan Lee doesn't understand Carter.
Mhm.
The issue is that Chris Tucker Carter doesn't understand Lee, and he's not leaving the space. And so, what I think is funny is, um, James one says, "Be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to
Yep.
get angry." And this happens for most of us when we think there's an issue where maybe, hey, they're not understanding me or I'm not understanding them. Our way to do it is, let me just speak louder.
Yeah,
Maybe if I get louder or more aggressive or whatever, I've become more manipulative with my point of view. Obviously now I'm taking it more metaphorical, but what I mean is that's the way we end up treating people who are different. Is let me just yell louder. Let
yeah,
me just go ahead.
because a lot of times we lead with assumptions rather than love. Because
Right.
if you lead with assumptions, you've already presumptively put a person in a position that they may not actually be in, or something about them that's true
Right.
before you even meet them. But if you lead with love, you're like, okay, I'm present with you in this conversation, in this moment. We're gonna interact, and you're listening, you're trying to be present. Whereas when you make assumptions, you walk into that conversation going, all right, look, this is what I know about you, this is what I think about you, and this is how I'm going to treat you.
Yeah. I think that's great. And I think so to have a conversation with our kids about it, and to be able to say, when you meet people, when you interact with people, don't take your first impression,
Hmm.
right? And sometimes we teach our kids it's safer. Hey, if you see a kid who's acting like this or doing that, stay away from that kid.
Yeah.
Don't hang out with that kid. That kid's trouble. That kid's bad news. And for you to kind of teach them, hey, just it's safer for you to stick with people who have the same, and we often say, who have the same goals as you, who have the same
Mhm.
ideas as you, and the same whatever. But the problem we know with that, and there's this idea, I think, and this often comes about with racism, but I think it comes with everything. Well, kids don't have prejudice. Kids just don't have it. They're taught it. They don't have it. But there was a study done. I don't remember when it was done, but where they took children of all different ethnicities and whatever, and they put down a bunch of different skin toned baby dolls and asked them to go pick with the one that they thought was most beautiful. And most of the kids would pick the doll that looked like them. And when they would separate, they would take them separate pictures out that they said of which people go together, and they would put all these different people with different ethnicities. Kids naturally group people who look the same with the same. There's something in their minds, and it's not racism in that they've made it moral. They think there's something in us that goes, people who look the same should be together.
Mhm.
And so kids have that somewhere in the back of their head. And for you as a parent to be able to come in and say, hey, there's something, isn't it? To almost switch it up and go, isn't there something beautiful about all the different skin tones? Isn't there something beautiful about all the different personalities and, and what we would know, they don't understand, like social class, like all the different income levels and all the different, that there's something beautiful about that. And that there's something you learn that you can't, by being together, that you can't learn if you're only with people who look like you and think like you. And the same is true for ages, right? There's a level of, I only want to be with people who had the same experience as I did and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because there's always that idea, like, I mean, I won't say always, but it's constant, that idea of a person that's younger than you doesn't have experience nor knowledge, and or that because they're older, that means they know everything. And a lot of times that's not the case, because I've known people that are, 10 years younger than me or more, and like their level of maturity and experience and knowledge is far beyond where I was at that age. And
Right.
I think a lot of times, like you said, I mean, unintentionally, the kid is just, their minds go to the idea of, well, these things these people, whatever it is, need to be grouped together. And not in the sense of, hey, I want to divide, but it's the idea of their minds going, well, similar. Their minds think of similar. And I think as parents in these conversations, when we're talking about is that the idea is that before you before you worry about anything about what you think about this person, take the time to hear from that person, because a lot of time it's the idea of, the person that flips to the back of the book and goes, oh, well, this is what you've done, so that must mean that you're this way. But it's the book that that the cover doesn't look quite exciting, but then you open it up and inside all the pages are full of everything that's happened, and you're like, wow, you've lived a very storied life. I mean,
Yeah.
you you don't, like, a person that opens the Bible for the first time, if you see this plain covered book, you go, oh, Bible, it just has 2 words on it. Okay. Then you open it up, you start reading, you're like, whoa, okay, okay. Guy with okay, threw a rock at a giant. Okay, this is, like, stuff like that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's that idea of that sometimes we don't think of those things. Like, I mean, we assume one thing and then we're done.
Yeah. Would you say it was similar, Donnie, to a person who maybe moved from Missouri to the ATL and maybe had judged Chris Tucker by
we full. Just kidding.
Is there any level of innocence that I can claim because of that? Because I'll take it. Okay.
No. You must grovel in
what,
shame before the throne of Chris Tucker.
Oh my!
And you can do so at any Atlanta Hawks game, because that's where he's hanging out every weekend. So he's not got anything else going on. So, all right, Heidi Cooper. When we were talking earlier, to kind of piggyback off of Donnie Dorsey's point there about common ground, right? There's this moment towards the end of the second act where Lee and Carter finally do kind of bond, and it's over their relationships with their father. That they both of their fathers were police officers, and they kind of have like this legacy they're trying to continue. Can you talk to some degree about how the movie talks about that, and how we can talk to our kids about, hey, instead of judging a book by its cover, try to understand another person's point of view, right? That isn't that what kind of turns the corner for them, but also in all of our relationships as well?
Yeah, I think that, them being able to connect, and it kind of comes up and they're not making an effort to get along. It just kind of comes up in their banter back and forth. But I think that, kind of like Donnie was saying too, and you were saying, like, to be slower to speak and to, give the opportunity for the other person to share a little bit about themselves, being open to people and just letting them be who they are, and not trying to think, okay, well, everybody thinks like me or acts like me or processes things like I do. April brought me a flower.
Oh, how wonderful.
But yeah, so I think that, like, to allow people to speak and kind of share a little bit of their own story, but then also to when you have those moments with somebody where you can really connect on a deeper level, to be willing to be vulnerable and say, yeah, like I have a similar experience. And sometimes that's really uncomfortable because there's so many reasons. You don't want to make it all about you. And then there's also like, well, if I start talking about this, like, what are they going to think about? Are they going to look at me different?
Yes.
And so there's so many different things that make that tough to do, but it really set the tone for their whole relationship. And then before you know it, they're like, Chris Tucker's trying Asian food, and they're teaching each other how to dance and how to do karate and take guns away from people.
Yes. But you have
all of those things.
Well, and I think to be able to talk to our kids, I think the part you talked about there that was huge, Heidi, that's important, is the part about being vulnerable, because the reasons that we make judgments, the reasons that we make assumptions about people is it feels safer because I can keep you at an arm's length. And I know all I need to know about you by the way that you vote, or I know all I need to know about you by even the way you've treated someone one day, right? Like,
it's brain mapping. Like, so it starts at such a young age. And so even, my little 3-year-old who just, came in the room, he's already started to learn how to navigate people based on the experiences that he's had. Well, when he's a pandemic baby. So if all his experiences have been with, his same family members and his little tiny group of friends, if that never expanded, and if our world never gets any bigger than just people who are like us, then that's really unfortunate, because we don't know, we are missing so much, our lens never gets expanded past what we understand and what we're like.
And isn't the truth, Heidi? So one, yes, everything that you just said, 100%. Don't you think that the hard part for us as parents with the vulnerability part is to teach our kids to go first, that you have to be vulnerable first? And we as parents are so fearful for them of, oh, maybe this kid will say something about whatever. I think about my children, and I've obviously mentioned that our children are adopted. We adopted them through foster care, but the specifics of their story I don't share because that's their story. It's their story to share. But I obviously know the specifics of their story. And there was a kid that they were interacting with pretty regularly at a place we were going, and they kind of thought that kid was kind of rude, and they had made, I don't want to whatever with that kid because that kid's kind of rude. And it's not like a kid who was putting them in any physical danger. It's just a kid that they didn't like the way they spoke to people. And so while they were having conversation one day, they kind of found out that there was something in this kid's past and in their life that is very similar to a detail from their past. And one of my daughters shared with the other one, oh, that's like my life, and shared it. And my other daughters were very upset because it's like, you're throwing our business in the street, you're, all this kind of stuff. But to be able to say to one of my daughters of, hey, you being vulnerable and sharing your story, and now our kids have become friends, and they have seen past, oh, I know sometimes I'm really easy to lose patience or lose temper because of all that's kind of happened and the way that kind of has made me sensitive and all these kind of things. Maybe that kid has the same kind of thing. And to watch them change their opinion of another person that they had written off, and how Christ-like that is, that Christ was the one who was vulnerable for us. He made him, think about that. The God of the universe made himself into a baby. The most vulnerable thing. And he chooses to be vulnerable for the sake of us. And once again, I'm not saying you put your kids, if there's a physical danger, that's not what we're trying to say. But often the people they write off is not, this kid's going to attack me. It's, I just don't like the way this kid speaks to people.
So I think it speaks to like a kind of a pretty big thing that we see in society, especially with parents, is that we want to protect our kids from so many different things. There's so much out there that we want to protect our kids from. But the way to protect them in those types of situations, to me, just from my personal experience, is to help them to build and establish a level of confidence that says that, okay, so this kid made fun of me because I do this thing, or I look like this, or I wear these, and that's true. And maybe to that person that's funny, or like, something to make fun of. But it's okay. Like you were talking about with
Yeah.
your daughter, she was able to have the confidence in who she is despite what has happened to say, hey, that's like how that's the experience I went through. And so it's interesting if you think about it that we protect them by actually building them up and giving them confidence and then letting them go into these situations because we can't,
Yeah.
I have one that's out of the house. He's 19. I have zero control over who picks on him at work. I
Right.
have no control over it. Is he still my baby? Oh, of course. I hope he's not
Right.
listening to this. But but yes, but the way that you can do it and that you can, sleep at night as a parent is by saying, I know that I've done my best to help them see that who they are in their unique self is valuable, the good parts and the challenging parts, and they can present that to people in such a way that, okay, if you don't like it, that's okay. You
Yeah.
don't have to, but I am who I am, and this is
Yeah.
my story.
Well, and I think when you get to that place where you can help your children, you're talking them through, hey, here's how to have this conversation. Here's how to do this. There is a safety net because you're the safety net. They can come back to you and you can speak the truth. You don't want the first time for them to have those kind of interactions be when they're 15 and they're already hiding things from you. And they're not going to tell you these things. But at 5, they will. I mean, they're going to. Your 3-year-old just came and gave you a flower in the middle of filming a podcast because they don't think there's no difference between me and mommy. I'm going to tell them everything. And so when I'm hurt, I'll tell them. But by the time they're 10, 12, 13, that changes. And so I think being able to talk to them about that. All right. I want to keep this moving because we're already running. This is a longer one. We may have to, I don't know, accidentally lose the footage where Sawyer slandered Chris Tucker. That may just happen. That may have to cut it shorter. But
I'm fine with that. I don't want people to dislike me. Okay.
They're coming for you.
You're the villain. It's your job.
I'm a textbook people pleaser, and Atlanteans are probably pissed at me right now.
I'll tell you this much, dude, and you don't know this, maybe. No one thinks about Chris Tucker. This is all a bit. No one thinks this much about Chris Tucker. Okay,
except for you and Donnie, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Apparently. So all right. So here is the conversation, though, that I think Sawyer, I want to get your input on. You had mentioned earlier that one of your favorite aspects of the movie is the character of Lee and kind of his perseverance. And we had a conversation before we started filming about this idea that really, when it comes to building relationships with people who are different than us, that's important just as people. But really, there is no motivation to do this other than that Jesus told us to do it. That we were told to do this. This was the mission we were given to reconcile not only people to God, but people to one another. That this is what the church is supposed to be. And it is difficult. And sometimes the person we're trying to build a relationship with doesn't want us to do it. And for us as believers to have the kind of perseverance of Lee to say, I was ordered to do this, so I'm going to do it. And you and Heidi had both kind of talked about that. But sorry, I want you to kind of talk about that just for a minute of how we see that in the character of Lee.
Yeah. So, I think the most important story part is definitely when they kind of connect over their dads. I think the second most important story part. So, they go and they try and rescue the little girl is the thing, and they fail, and they get kicked off their case. So it happens a billion times in every buddy comedy cop movie. Okay, nothing is atypical so far. But I think the moment that I love the most in the movie, that is kind of like the most heartful for me, is they get kicked off the case, and Carter, Chris Tucker's character, basically has this opportunity. If we're at the beginning of the movie, Carter is just walking off the case, fine, I'm done with this. This is not worth it anymore. But he goes out of his way when Lee is at his lowest to tell Lee's boss, hey, this guy cares about your daughter, and you need to make sure that he's the one that finds her because he loves her and stuff like that. And I think that's the most emblematic journey that Carter goes on. And it also is just this moment where Lee is kind of at his lowest, and Carter gets to hold him up and stuff like that. I really love that moment. And I think, as you were saying, it's almost very church-like. That's kind of what we're meant to be with each other, is to hold each other up in the gospel and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, and I think in particular to honor one another and to
Yeah.
be self-sacrificial in our love for one another, and to say, as Carter did, like, hey, you may not respect me and the decisions I made, but Lee's in this for the right reason. And to be that way of
Mhm.
I'm gonna honor one another. And Heidi, you kind of picked up on that perseverance and talked about how the reason Lee does this is because he was kind of asked to by the guy he respects the most, and how that relates. Can you talk about how that relates to us as believers saying, I'm going to do this no matter what, because this is what my master told me to do?
Yeah, I think so. It's like he comes to a totally, a foreign place to him, and he only comes because his authority told him to, and he does not allow anything to like deter him from what he's supposed to be doing until his authority tells him, okay, you're done. And when he does say you're done, then he lets it go and he keeps moving forward. But I think that the thing that kind of stuck out to me about that is that is essentially, if we do that, then at any point, no matter what the circumstances are or how crazy or hard to navigate they are for us, if our focus is doing what our authority has told us to do, doing the right thing, regardless of the circumstances, it's that lesson that is kind of almost the foundation for everything. If we're doing what Jesus told us to do, then it doesn't matter how difficult people are or how, out of place we feel or how insecure or vulnerable or any of that stuff, because, going back to the confidence thing, our confidence is in Christ. And if we know that we're following our authority, then we don't have anything to be anxious about.
Well, and I think that's right. And I think what ends up happening is it's just easier in churches for everyone to be the same and for everyone to just stick with people who are like them, and for us to teach our kids, hey, move towards people who look different than you. And it might be difficult. I get that kid doesn't talk in a way that you like. And I'm not saying you don't tell that kid, hey, that wasn't respectful, or hey, that was rude. You obviously hold kids accountable, but to be able to say these relationships are difficult, and not to just say, hey, just do that at school. I think that's important to do at school, but where it's supposed to happen is the church. And it's always going to be difficult in a place like school where this other kid has no interest in ever really cooperating with you. But the church is the place you're stuck in that class because we're coming to church and I'm not moving you out of that class. And you're going to be in that class with that kid who may be difficult and may whatever, to say that. Obviously with your teenagers, that's when it becomes a bigger deal, is when you got kids in youth group who go, I don't want to go to youth group because I don't like anyone at youth group. Too bad. You go to youth group and you're going to find ways to build relationships with these people, because this is what we do as followers of Jesus. But those seeds have to be planted younger, and that's what we're going to be about. And so obviously this is a great conversation to have with your kids, with your teenagers, and we think it'll help you help them learn to love Jesus and his way of life, and even more, which is really what we do on this podcast, besides diehard stan Chris Tucker. So I
like Chris Tucker in this movie. I want to make that abundantly clear.
And you think he deserved an Academy Award for it?
That is not even a little bit true, but
I just don't understand. I don't understand. You know what? But I'm going to honor you, Sawyer, and just say any diehard stands that want to come after Chris Sawyer for I messed that whole thing up. I'm tired. I messed that whole bit up. I don't even remember. We'll just end at that point. All right. Hey, very good, though. We're glad you guys joined us on this week's episode, and we hope to see you next week.